The Bible is an important book. It's a big book, but it can be a confusing and overwhelming book too. So where do we begin as we try to get going with reading the Bible? My name is Ethan Luhman. I'm a pastor at Peace Church in Eau Claire. I've been a pastor for over 10 years, and I want to help you walk through the Bible in a couple different ways. So we're going to have a little session here called The Bible in 5 Chapters. And we're going to look at 5 individual chapters of the Bible and use them as a lens to look at the overall story of the Bible, because the Bible was written in a span of over 1,000 years. It's really a collection of books from dozens of authors. There's different genres, there's different metaphors and idioms, and you open up the page and sometimes you're like, what is going on? How do you begin to understand the overarching story? So there's 2 things we want to do. We want to get an idea of the overarching story that is the Bible, and as well as feel comfortable opening up to a page of the Bible and looking at a chapter and looking at a verse and being able to put it into the broader context of what God is trying to say through this book. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through 5 chapters. I picked 5 chapters to guide us through the overarching story of faith in the Bible. Hebrews chapter 11 is known as the heroes of faith. And it's going to be a lens through which we can look at the whole Old Testament and see the faithful people who followed God in various circumstances that they encountered. Then we're going to look at Psalm 78. And it's an odd fit if you're going to have to pick 5 chapters from the Bible, but what Psalm 78 highlights is actually the hope that we have as Christians. Psalm 78 is about a bunch of faithless people, but in spite of all their faithlessness and their disobedience, we find a God who's faithful to his promises, and we can always trust in him. So we have a chapter on hope, Psalm 78. We move to the New Testament again in John chapter 1. And in John chapter 1, we see this bridge between what we call the Old Testament, those books that came before Jesus, and then the New Testament, the books written about Jesus and then after Jesus' resurrection. And John chapter 1 is going to see how Jesus holds together the whole story and how he can lead us personally too. And after that, we're going to go to Romans chapter 8. Romans itself is like a theological textbook on the big story of the Bible, but Romans 8 is like this linchpin in the middle. It's this beautiful summary of what the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ mean for us today as people who trust in God. So it's really about life. Romans 8 is a chapter about life. And what we're going to see then, and our last one, is Revelation chapter 22. This is the very last chapter of the Bible. So it gives us that final look at where all things are heading. And in addition to that, it gives us this beautiful picture of God's love and how God's love is what holds all things together. So we have faith, hope, light, life, and love. And these 5 chapters, I hope what they'll do is they'll help you get the bigger picture of what's going on throughout all the pages and stories and different authors over 1,000 years. But more than that you'll feel comfortable to open up to any page and start to digest maybe what God is trying to say to you through this ancient book. And interestingly, as I was picking these 5 chapters, I added up the total number that these chapters represented, because numbers matter in the Bible. We got 7 days of creation. We have 40 days of temptation for Jesus. We have 40 years in the wilderness. We have 12 apostles and 12 sons of 12 sons of Jacob. All these numbers, and they all added up to 120. Now, 120 is actually a biblical number. We find it twice. Once in Genesis chapter 6, after mankind falls into sin. They still live, 800, 900 years, but God says in Genesis 6, I'm sick of these people. I'm going to limit their years to 120. And so through the flood and through whatever means he predisposed. I mean, my take on it is he limited the gene pool and he limited the food that was available to people. So either way, he limited the number of years to 120. And then at the other time we find 120 is in Acts chapter 1. After Jesus rises from the dead and then ascends into heaven, the apostles and the disciples, the first followers of Jesus, gather together to pray and to worship Jesus and to get prepared for what God is about to do through the church. And it says there's about 120 people. So the thing about it, whether it's the years of our life or whether it's the number of Christians that make up the very first congregation, it's like not a lot. We can look and say, yeah, 120 years, that's a long life. But still, it's not eternity. It's not 800, 900. It's not what God intended. It's not a lot. And 120 people, that's not like a huge church. That's not a lot of people to begin your whole movement throughout the world as the church. It's not a lot, but it's enough. And so as I was dwelling on that, this study, it's not going to be a lot. We're not going to go through every page of the Bible. We're not going to go through every issue that the Bible brings up. We're not going to be able to answer all the deep questions that you personally might be wrestling with. But I think and I hope it'll be enough to get you going, to get you reading and to get you curious about what God has to say about all those other things that God certainly has something to say about. So thanks for joining in, and we're looking forward to getting into the very first chapter in our next video, Hebrews chapter 11. We'll see you soon.